A new analysis in the Calgary Herald shows just how addicted British Columbia is to oil and gas, foreign oil and gas. Canada has the third largest oil reserves in the world. Canada is also the fourth largest oil and gas producer. But a new article in the Calgary Herald by Ron Wallace and Jack Mintz shows us all just how devastating a lack of pipeline infrastructure is to the entire Canadian economy and our hope of oil independence. But it also shows just how reliant the lower mainland of British Columbia is on foreign oil and how quickly they've been hurt by a pipeline deficit there. The article states that in February alone, while Canada exported $8.8 billion in energy products, Canada also imported $3.38 billion of energy from international sources, which according to Statistics Canada represents a year-to-year increase of 12.3%. What this means is over 1/3 of our energy came from places less environmentally sound and less interested in human rights than us here in Canada. This is thanks in no small part to Justin Trudeau and Rachel Notley and their overregulation, litigious infrastructure deficits, and hippies who don't need oil because they take the bus. As an accumulation, imports of energy products into Canada have grown by over 15%, with the highest share of those imports originating in the United States. Now here is where it gets really relevant and really interesting, because those spiking oil imports to Canada are driven, ironically, by the consumption demand by the anti-oil folks in the lower mainland of BC. Again, this is from the Jack Mintz, Ron Wallace article. The importation of crude oil and bitumen advanced 15.4%, with refined products, that means gasoline imports, up by 24.1%, the latter due largely to increased imports of gasoline into British Columbia. Translation: Canada is seeing a spike in oil and gas imports to our country when Canada, with the third largest reserves in the world, could be meeting our own demand, except the problem is the government in British Columbia would much rather have their folks buy their gas from Washington State than from us here in Alberta. Oh, but wait, there's more to this story, because right now in British Columbia, the people are being mugged by the reality of basic economics, but the NDP government there just won't stop, put two and two together, and do something about it. Just this week in Vancouver, gas prices hit their third all-time high ever. According to former Liberal MP and contributor to GasBuddy.com, Dan McTeague, the prices have gotten so bad in the lower mainland that Canadians are lining up at the US border, where they can save as much as $50 per tank by purchasing American gas. McTeague explains that the prices are the result of a temporary refinery closure and the shutdown of the Olympic pipeline in Washington State, as well as a general increase in the price of crude oil. Weird how that supply and demand thingy works now. It's almost like the lower mainland of British Columbia would benefit greatly from a project that would drastically increase the supply of oil to meet their demands for gasoline. British Columbians right now are being hurt by the shutdown of one pipeline in the United States and the lack of the expansion of a Canadian pipeline. And I find it strange that foreign-funded environmentalists aren't protesting that Olympic pipeline in Washington State. In fact, the government of Washington State hopes BC is successful in blocking the Trans Mountain Pipeline. Of course they hope that. The lack of a pipeline here in Canada is a real boom to the cross-border economy of Washington State. And while I don't have a lot of respect or sympathy for the government of British Columbia, I've got a heck of a lot of sympathy for the good people who reside there, because by and large, they want a pipeline too. A recent Angus Reid poll found that 54% of survey respondents in British Columbia said they support the expansion of the Kinder Morgan Trans Mountain Pipeline. And that support is rising, up 6% since February. And opposition to the pipeline has fallen 2%, down to 38%. The more the pipeline delays hurt the people of British Columbia, the more support for the pipeline rises. The people of British Columbia support Canadian oil and gas, and they support us here in Alberta, and they are just as hostage to the environmental movement, both in their own government and on the ground as we are here in Alberta, and they too are paying the same price we are. It's costing all of our families money. For the Rebel.media, I'm Sheila Gunn-Reid. What you just saw there is my daily video here at The Rebel, but I also have my own weekly full-length show where we discuss issues facing Canadian families. To get access to my show and the rest of our incredible premium content, treat yourself to a Rebel subscription today.